It's another Friday, so it's time to answer some questions from our mailbag next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you are a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I do some co-hosting, some hosting, and some producing as well. So I stay pretty busy in the daily sports world. But when you come to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you are getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. If you are maybe traveling to LA or you're in LA listening to this episode before a big 3-game series against the Dodgers, think about buying tickets over at Game Time. They're always going to have the best deals for you, and they are today's title sponsor. We'll have more on them coming up a little bit later on in today's show. Questions and comments can always be left to me on Twitter or on YouTube, especially for days like today when it is a Mailbag Friday, which is dedicated to the listener. Every Friday, we just answer questions from whatever is on your guys' minds about the 40-30 Kansas City Royals. So let's dive right into it with question number one. Alex asks Caden Wallace and Noah Cameron for Ryan Helsley and Paul Goldschmidt, who says no. I think that would be the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't think Paul Goldschmidt is probably going to play anywhere else in his career after going to St. Louis. And also, I just don't see it being a fit for the Royals. Ryan Helsley is going to be one of the hotter names out there, I think, for the trade market. But I think I said this in last Mailbag Friday. I don't see the Cardinals being sellers. I think they view themselves as a team that can go and compete for a wild card spot in the National League. It's kind of easy at this point to grab that final spot. You just need to hover around 500 for the 7th spot in the wild card race as opposed to the American League when the Minnesota Twins are the 7th seed in that type of race. So I don't see St. Louis selling at all. So that's why I'm going to say the Cardinals are going to be the ones to say no on a deal like that. Next one comes from Mad Jayhawk 92. How many Olathe Yankee fans drove the entire 26 miles home from the K this afternoon? So that's coming from the other day with the Royals walk-off. That is kind of the ongoing joke. And it also was an ongoing joke when the Dodgers were in town last year for the Royals. Yeah, I think that rubs a lot of Royals fans the wrong way. I think that rubs a lot of people the wrong way when opposing fans that are in your ballpark grew up in the area where there was a team and you root for not just any team, the New York Yankees, who are, of course, the biggest brand in Major League Baseball, or somebody like the Dodgers. But everybody has a right to be a fan of whoever they want to. Just because you grow up somewhere doesn't mean you have to be a fan of that team. But I'm sure a lot of the fans that made the trek out were not too happy that Clay Holmes blew that game on Thursday afternoon. Yeah, I'm already getting my days mixed up. Chance asks, is it time to give up on Brady Singer? How much longer do you think the Royals will give him a spot in the starting rotation if he continues to struggle? I don't think the Royals are going to give him any sort of boot from the rotation. I think that Brady Singer is going to have that spot all season long. I just don't think he's ever going to be a starter that can shove against a really good lineup. I think you can count on him to pitch well enough against bad teams. Sometimes in the toss-ups when you play a 500 team or maybe a team that's on the cusp of the playoffs, it can go either way. But when you face a really good lineup, I just don't think you're going to see the best from him. And this year, I mean, I go back to it over and over again. If I said in February that in mid-June, Brady Singer would have a 3.3 ERA and just not tell you the rest of the numbers, I think you would have said, I'm locking that in whether it's all luck or not. So I don't think he's in any danger of losing his spot. I think the Royals fully expect him to bounce back in his next start. It would be this Sunday against the Dodgers. And I'm not confident in that, but I feel like the Royals would be confident in Brady Singer bouncing back on Sunday in the series finale against the Dodgers. This one comes from RB Carr. Royals need a high leverage reliever, a starting pitcher, and a bat. How many of those needs will they acquire before the deadline? I think that they are going to acquire some form of a corner outfield bat, and I do think they're going to acquire some bullpen help. Starting pitcher, not likely. I don't think they're going to have enough resources to fill all three of those needs, but I think they could find a cheap corner outfield bat. If they go after somebody like Taylor Ward, which John Heyman, by the way, today made a prediction that Taylor Ward will go to the Royals. I think that would mean they'd only get one bullpen guy. I don't think they could get a corner outfield bat and two bullpen guys unless those two bullpen arms are very inexpensive or that corner outfield bat is very inexpensive. But I don't see them getting all three spots. Starting pitching market is just so tough to come up with the resources or the funds to make a deal like that. Waka Season asked, do you believe Massey was on the fast track to starting in the All-Star game before getting hurt? No, I wouldn't have gone that far. I don't think he was really close for that matter. He was heating up, and that's all the Royals could have asked for. But there's just guys that are ahead of him that are much better at that spot. I think Michael Massey is a good second baseman, but he still, I mean, think about it. He missed a large chunk of the first part of the year, and then he had only had, 25 to 30 games. Because of the chunk of time he missed at the beginning of the year, I think he automatically would have been ruled out to starting in the All-Star game. But my predictions right now, I think it'll be Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez, and Cole Reagans being the representatives for the Kansas City Royals in Arlington next month around this time, actually. This question comes from Dro. When's a realistic date we could see Bubic make his first start? It's a good question. I've been getting this a lot. I still think the Royals are going to really slow play it, and I don't know if Chris Bubic makes a start this year. I think it would have to be another injury in the rotation for that to happen. I feel like the Royals are confident that Michael Wacha, after throwing that simulated game on Thursday afternoon, is on the fast track now where the Royals can skip Daniel Lynch's spot or his old spot in the rotation against Oakland because they have this off day on Monday. And then the next time around, which would be in Texas over next weekend, Michael Wacha could likely make his return because he's due to come off the injured list on the 16th. And then it'd be up to the Royals at that point if they want to send him on a rehab, start or go down for, a couple of innings in Omaha or AA Northwest Arkansas just to see how it all feels. But for Chris Bubic, that's the main question here. I don't think we'll see him in Kansas City until maybe late July. I think that would be kind of my target date. Hopefully it's sooner than that. I just think the Royals are really going to ease him in there. And then by then, it'll be a bullpen move that he might be there for long relief. But very excited to see Chris Bubic back soon because I think that he is definitely going to help out this team as they make their playoff push. Jesse asks, I think I know the answer to this, but given the Royals' lack of starting pitching depth, is it really that bad of an idea to sign Trevor Bauer to a minor league deal? Also, it is crazy to want Mondesi on a minor league deal. Also, is it crazy, to want Mondesi on a minor league deal playing the outfield? No trades necessary. Love the show. Well, appreciate the kind words, Jesse. Mondesi is an interesting one. He hasn't played at all, I don't think, since being traded from the Royals. So I don't know where his head's at. I don't know what his health is like. I think the Royals like their options that they are kind of molding down at the minor league level, and I don't think they want a guy like Adalberto Mondesi who hasn't played in now 2 years, 3 years, 2 full seasons, I think, to go and take a spot like that. I always wondered, though, before they traded him to Boston for Josh Taylor, if it was worth keeping him around as a pinch runner, like Dairon Blanco's spot, because he had the game-changing speed, but so does a guy like Dairon Blanco. As for Trevor Bauer, look, I think I've stayed pretty consistent with my answers, and you already said, I think I know the answer to this, and it's not that I am ever going to look at this question and throw it away, because I think it's fine to every once in a while bring it up, but my stance on it the whole time has been until I see any rumblings, any rumors about any team being interested, I just don't think the Royals are ever going to be one of those teams. Now, things could change if he starts getting some calls from a team and then it's like, okay, we got 3 or 4 teams interested in Trevor Bauer, different story here. But right now, it's the same as it was in the offseason. I don't think anybody's coming anywhere close to Trevor Bauer, and whatever their reasons may be, that he hasn't pitched in the big leagues in now 3 years, or they don't want to work with him, all these exterior factors. Look, you can have your own opinion. You are entitled to that opinion. I'm just going from a pure baseball standpoint. There's been nothing said about it. There's been no rumored interest from major league teams, and until I hear anything differently than that, I'm just going to say it's not a likely option. Jack asked question 1, what was your thoughts on Q's ejection? Was he right? Number 2, what's your thoughts on the Dodger series? You think they can ride the energy/momentum? Well, it is funny with the energy and momentum, how quickly things can shift. I mean, the Royals got beat up for 3 games. I had some people in my replies in my comment section saying, oh, they're done watching. This team's terrible. They should be sellers. And like one game can change that whole perspective. Not saying it was you, listener. I know it wasn't you for a fact. I know the people exactly who comment every single time the Royals lose, the negative thoughts about them. But, I think they can take one. And I think that's fine. I think going into the Yankee series, I said if they can take 2 games this week, I feel fine because that put them at 7-12 in this brutal stretch of play. That's not great. It's also not terrible or bottoming out like I was starting to think after game 2 of that Yankee series. And as for Q's ejection, I loved it, man. He is the most even-keeled, calm guy. Every time we interview him in the clubhouse, interviewed him in spring training, he doesn't even raise his voice. So to see him that animated, I think it was a little bit of he believed he was absolutely right on the call, or on Matt Quattro's side, he thought the umpire was completely in the wrong. And I would need to go back and see the replay again because there's that borderline rule of you blocking your foot before you have the bag or blocking it when you have the ball. So it's kind of a borderline there. I think it was a lot of our team needs a little bit of a spark. It's the old manager's rule there that you go out there and get your team fired up. And I don't think he wanted to get ejected, but he was certainly red hot from that call. And I love to see a guy like Matt Quatraro get that fired up, and certainly more so when it leads to a win later on in that game, which it did in walk-off fashion against the New York Yankees. Okay, we still have plenty of more questions to get into, so let's take a quick break and come back and answer 10 more next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Want to tell you about one of our sponsors today in Tax Network USA. Here on Locked On Royals, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. You can see that link in the episode description below. We still have about 20 or so questions to go here. Don't want to waste any more time. Let's send it over to Ben, who asked Bobby Leeds Major League Baseball and batting average. Is something like that sustainable through a full 162-game season? I mean, I could see him leading the league in hitting this year. I absolutely could see something like that. I mean, he's one of the best players in baseball. And when you are a top 5 player, top 3 player in baseball, there's always a chance that you could lead the league in hitting. I think a big part of that, I was about to say a good part of that, of course, it's a fantastic part, but a big part of leading the league in hitting, you got to walk a lot because your average isn't going to change, right? Even if you go 0 for 2, well, it can turn an 0 for 4 batting average drop. If you're 0 for 2 with 2 walks, it's only dropping a little bit there. And Bobby Witt Jr. has a career-high 7% walk rate right now. So that's up from last year, up from his rookie season. If that continues to go up, he's going to have a really good chance. But as if it's sustainable, absolutely. I mean, he's one of the best players in baseball. And when you are that good, you're always going to have a good chance to lead the league in average. Spin the Ball podcast, as same as before. Why on earth is Hampson playing over Lofton? It will never make sense to me. Lofton is simply better. Well, I will say this about Garrett Hampson, and Garrett Hampson frustrated me on Thursday afternoon because he made that error that I can't believe. It might still be ruled a hit, although I think it's going to be changed here in the coming days, coming weeks, whenever they get a chance to firmly review that, because that wasn't a bad hop. That was just hit hard, and he needed to make that play, and both he and Vinny Pasquantino didn't make the play. But Garrett Hampson's hitting over 300. So it's not like if this was different if Garrett Hampson was hitting 150 or 160. Nick Lofton's been just as good, too. Maybe not as good average-wise as Hampson, but I think in terms of value, just as good. Garrett Hampson just made some head-scratching plays this year that make everybody want to turn against him, right? The base running gaffes, the fielding gaffes. But at the plate, if, like I said with Brady Singer, if I would have said in February that in mid-June, Garrett Hampson would be hitting over 300, we'd all be talking about what a great underrated signing it was. So he's not really playing over Lofton. If anything, Adam Frazier is playing a little bit more over Lofton because Michael Massey's still out. But when Massey's healthy, when Massey's back, that's going to be his spot. And I think right now the Royals are doing a good job of piecing it together at second base until Massey's come back. Frazier's gotten hot. Hampson's hitting over 300, and Lofton has been really good since being recalled. So I don't really have too many complaints there. Caleb asked, should we give Walter Pennington a try? I feel like he has earned it. I absolutely think he has earned it, and I can't wait for the day that Walter Pennington finally gets the call to Kansas City, because they've tried it with Tyler Duffy, they've tried it with Will Klein, they've tried it with Dan Altavilla. I know it's a lot of lefties in the bullpen, but Walter Pennington doesn't belong in AAA anymore, and I think it's worth a shot. You kind of saw this diamond in the rough with Sam Long, the way that he's looked so far. Imagine just adding another Sam Long and Walter Pennington, which I think he can be for this Royals bullpen. But it does come down to how many lefties do you want in the bullpen, and that would give them Sam Long, Angel Serpa, Will Smith, and then Walter Pennington. That'd give them 4, so basically half their bullpen would be lefties. Maybe that matters to you, but I know doesn't matter to you, but I know sometimes it does matter to the manager how many lefties they actually want to carry. But as for giving him a try, I'm all on board. I don't think I need to see Walter Pennington in AAA anymore. Numbers are too good. Low walk rate, high strikeout rate, limits the hard contact. I'd be excited to see him up in Kansas City, and I'm hoping so before the All-Star break because he absolutely deserves that chance. DJ asked, the recent struggles of Salvador Perez are attributed to, why is JJ set on Vincent being 3 or 4 hole? I've never heard Vinny be called Vincent, but I'm kind of like it. Well, here's the thing. Salvador Perez, he is struggling. Everybody knows that he's struggling. I don't think with a player like him, though, there's one thing I look at and say, here's why. I mean, it's kind of obvious. He swings at a lot of pitches out of the zone, and when he slumps and he's swinging at those and they aren't falling, it looks really bad at the plate. The reality is, though, Salvador Perez is never going to change his approach at the plate. And what we saw in the first half of the season, I don't think you want him to change everything at the plate. He is a very well-established veteran. He is going to the All-Star game, whether it be a starter or just a representative. He's having a career offensive year. He's just in a really bad slump. And I think that Salvador Perez is a player that when he's really hot, he's really hot. But when he's really cold, he is really, really cold. And that just goes to more so the plate discipline. But he's also walking more than he ever has in his career. But he does need a ball to leave the yard, a double in the gap to clear the bases, something just to get everybody going. Okay, Salvi appears to be back here because he was not good at all in that Yankees series and hasn't been good really in this month of June. So hoping for him to heat up a little bit. As for Vinny, hitting in the 3 or 4 hole, I mean, I don't know why everybody's been thinking Vinny's struggling. Vinny's been pretty good since, I think, like mid-May. He goes through his moments and his stretches, but since that awful stretch, Royals Review put this out, since it's awful stretch to begin the year, his OBP is like 350. So he's basically being Vinny Pasquantino, and he's hitting above league average in terms of WRC+. So I think he's fine at the 3 or 4 hole, and I don't think the Royals really have a better option to put in the 3 or 4 hole. So that's why Matt Contreras is sticking with him there. It's why he stuck with him at the beginning of the year. It's why he stuck with Michael Garcia at the leadoff spot. He just has confidence in his players and believes they're going to turn things around. And I just don't really have too much of an issue with where Vinny's hitting at this point in time. Aiden asks, how important was the win yesterday for this team? That was huge, man, because they blew that game in the 8th, and the way it got down in the 9th inning, you're 2 outs, Kyle Isbell's up. If Kyle Isbell strikes out or he rolls over, it's a sad flight to L.A., and I think a large part of the fan base is going to go, well, here's the collapse. They clearly can't compete with the top half of the teams, and when it rains, it pours, because now we got the Los Angeles Dodgers and Yamamoto and Glasnow waiting for us in this weekend series. But that was huge to once again have a comeback win, to do it with the guys that did it, to still be able to recognize Alec Marsh's start, and then you're 40-30 through 70 games. It's a massive win. Absolutely emotional and, I would say month-changing type of win. The month of June has not been that kind to the Royals, but that was a big win. I don't know if they're going to be able to build off it. We'll find out tonight in game 1 of this series against the Dodgers, but that was huge to avoid being swept once again. And here we are on June 15th or June 14th, and the Royals still haven't been swept this year. Marty asked, do you have any inside info on who the Royals are leaning towards with the number 6 pick? Well, from the last thing that we were able to kind of know is that at least, and this can always change, so that's the tough part about drafts, is that I remember like a month or two ago, Seemed like they were leaning a little bit toward the prep side, go with more of the prep bats out there. However, I saw a mock draft today that Hagen Smith out of Arkansas was mocked to Kansas City. They're going to have a great opportunity to pick a premier talent at the number 6 spot. It's a loaded class, a lot of great college players. But if it's all college with the first 5 picks, I think the Royals would go prep with that 6th pick. I love the Griffin kid. I think Connor Griffin. I might be blanking on his name right now. But I know the prep side was liked early on in the season. That can always change, though, depending how the college season finishes up, what they see in those players. And again, I guess we'll see here in about a month. But I know a while back, the Royals liked the prep bats a little bit more. But now they may be liking the college pitcher route or the college hitter route. We'll see how the draft falls, though, here about a month from now. Okay, we're going to take our second break of the show, When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with our final round of questions on a Mailbag Friday. But before we do that, want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When we come back, we'll wrap up Mailbag Friday next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to the couple of sponsors today, starting with our title sponsor in Game Time. If you are thinking about going to the next homestand, you're thinking about going to the concert, the biggest concert coming up. I know Kenny Chesney's coming to Arrowhead, I believe, coming up here. Is it July? I think it is at the beginning of July. Buy the tickets on Game Time. Game Time is a great app to use. They're going to have great deals whether you're going by yourself, multiple people. It really does not matter because they have a great bundle deal out there. They show you the hottest deals, and you never have to worry about the tickets getting to you on time. I get them almost instantaneously. I went to the game on Monday night as a fan and Wednesday night as a fan. And I bought my tickets on Game Time, and I was able to transfer my ticket over to my buddy. We met at the gate, got inside, easy peasy. Game Time is perfect for making everything easy on you because it's not always simple for people to be buying tickets online. You know, if you're old school and you used to just love buying the tickets from the website, that's all fine and dandy, but Game Time, they're going to make it easy on you. So with Game Time, you need to download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off on your first purchase. That is Locked On College for $20 off on your first purchase. So download that Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also want to tell you about our local sponsor here in PXG Golf. You've known plenty about them now and how much I love going in there. I loved getting my fitting for my driver. Want to go in next and get fitted for probably my short game because that's where it really struggles for me in the golf world. As I think for a lot of people, you struggle a lot with the short game. 3 putts, sometimes 4 putts, it can get ugly when it's on a hot day and you start to get frustrated a little bit. But at least I want to know I got the right clubs with me and I don't want to worry about a club that might be faulty. The fitting, it suits you. And I've never driven the ball so straight, so hard, and really with that type of spin. It was so cool to see, and it was such a great experience. They made me a believer, and they'll do the same for you and every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/LockedOnRoyals. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. And this promotion ends on June 30th. Those other terms and conditions may apply. You can see their store for details. We just got a few more questions to go to wrap up another edition of a Mailbag Friday. And we're going to swing it to Tom, who asked, do you think they'll skip Lynch's spot in the rotation next week? Built-in day off after LA. Would you like to see them do that, then have Walker or Bubic take the next start? Yeah, we already talked about that a little bit. I do think they skip that spot in the rotation because they just demoted Daniel Lynch. Barring any unforeseen changes, I think they'll take that off day, just skip it, and go right to Alec Marsh. And then you'll have Marsh, Reagans, and Lugo for the Oakland series. And then it would line up Singer, Waka, I think, on Saturday in Texas, and then back to whatever that spot would be on Sunday. Or no, that would actually be Waka, and then it'd be Marsh again on Sunday. So I think they're going to go that route just because let's not do the opener again. Let's not go with anybody down in the minor leagues, not even Anthony Veneziano. I think the next guy to make a start in that spot in the rotation is going to be Michael Wacha. Probably still a few weeks, if not a month away from seeing Chris Bubic up in Kansas City. Just really think that they are going to slow play that. Jeff asks, don't really got a question. Just enjoy the show. Thanks for always doing this. Appreciate the kind words, Jeff. You're always a very loyal listener. And we want to make sure this episode is best for all the great listeners out there and any listener really that appreciates Locked On Royals. Eli has 2 questions here. Is there a specific reason why Pennington is being kept down, especially when Anderson has options left? I think there always is a reason why a minor leaguer, even if the numbers are great, the Royals won't make that move. Maybe they see something in Walter Pennington that they want to be fine-tuned or solidified down in AAA before they make that transition, or they just feel more confident with who they have up in Kansas City and don't want to put that type of pressure to fix a bullpen on a rookie who's never pitched really in a type of, pressure-filled situation like this. When you look at a team that's in the playoffs right now, competing for the playoffs, you don't want to put all that type of pressure on a guy that is making his debut at the age of 25 and 26. You want to put that pressure on the veterans out there. And I think the Royals will find the right time to call him up. I don't know if it'll be in place of Nick Anderson, but it should be a matter of time before we do see Walter Pennington. Eli also asked, what would a prospect package for Tanner Scott and Brian De La Cruz look like with the Marlins? With Brian De La Cruz and the years of control he has and Tanner Scott, I think you'd have to part ways with 2 of your top 10 prospects. So maybe it'd be a Caden Wallace and a Ben Kudrna to get something like that. Or, I just think Blake Mitchell and Blake Walters, those type of guys, they're going to be off limits for trade deals. I think they want to keep Gavin Cross as well, but who knows? Getting an extra bat like that in Brian De La Cruz, I think would be a lot of fun. But the Marlins also have a young player there with a lot of control, and Tanner Scott's their closer. So they're going to be asking for a lot to get a package deal with those players. Riley asked, do we have a return timeline for Massey? Not really at the moment. I still have made the prediction. I think it's going to be after the All-Star break, but shortly after that. I think they're just going to make sure that he's completely rested. And even if he's ready to go right before the All-Star break, just give him that extra week or 2. Send him down to the rehab assignment again in Omaha to get right and then be ready to go for a second half playoff push, because that's when they're going to need Michael Massey the most. JHB asked, does Massey split time at second base? When does Renfroe come back? Honestly, if they pick up an outfielder, who goes? So with Massey, if he comes back, I think he's going to be the starter. They'll probably, filter in Nick Lofton and Adam Frazier from time to time, but Michael Massey's going to be that guy as long as he's hitting well. As for Hunter Renfroe, the good news was it's not a fracture. So you're looking at, instead of a 4 to 6 week absence, probably only a 2-week absence. And he was out there working and throwing the other day. So I think by, let's say the beginning of July, I'd say the beginning of the July would be a good, time stamp for when Hunter Renfroe is going to return. And then lastly, who would be going if they are to acquire an outfield bat? Well, let's see. Drew Waters was called up because of Renfroe. So if Renfroe comes in, that'll move Drew Waters back down. If they go out there and get a corner outfield bat, well, then you have the hard decision to make of, does that move MJ Melendez to Omaha? Does that lead to a DFA of a Garrett Hampson or Adam Frazier? Does Dairon Blanco? I know I probably should have looked at the options for all the players there because I'm not really caught up at this point in time with who has options and who doesn't. But I'd say it'd be one of the non-starters. I think it'd be somebody like a Frazier, a Hampson, or a Dairon Blanco if they are to acquire a starting bat out there, which does, present some tough realities for the Royals, that sometimes you're going to be letting go of a guy that wasn't playing poorly. You just had an upgrade at that said position. This one comes from, we still got a good bit to go here. MIZ asks, MIZ123 fan asks, does Bobby Witt Jr. deserve a starting spot in the AL at shortstop? I say so. However, Henderson makes a great option as well. I wish they could start at short and second base. But I think Bobby Witt Jr. is deserving. And I think for a lot of voters, they're just going to look at batting average. And Bobby Witt Jr. is about, I think at this point, 60 points higher than Gunnar Henderson, even though Gunnar Henderson has a higher F-WAR than Bobby Witt Jr. this time. But yeah, I think he does deserve the starting spot in the American League and National League All-Star game. Jake asked serious question here. Jack, in a scenario where the Royals acquire Jazz Chisholm, do they match the swag surfing Chiefs in terms of team vibes? Man, that'd be really tough to top because the Chiefs were also just winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl. I'm going to say no on that, but Jazz Chisholm would certainly give the Royals an all-time vibe feeling, at least in the outfield, but certainly in the locker room as well. Jason S. being that Q was a part of Tampa Bay, could you see him using Bubic as an opener to maybe Singer because he is having trouble getting through multiple innings? Yeah, I could see that as being a possibility as well. I think Brady Singer would have to have probably 4 or 5 bad outings in a row, though, for that to be any sort of decision. And Chris Bubic, I think, would have to thrive in a role like that for him to, really thrive in that role, probably down in Omaha first before he would get that spot in Kansas City. Charles asks, what surprise do you see the Royals potentially sending to the All-Star game? What surprise player, and would you be disappointed that Bobby Witt Jr. isn't a starter at shortstop? I would be disappointed because it's his homecoming game, basically. His dad played for the Rangers for years, so I would be disappointed. Surprise player, maybe Seth Lugo, just because of what he was able to accomplish this year. But I've already said I think it's Salvi, Bobby, and Cole Reagan's going to be going to the All-Star game for the Royals. Steven asks who leaves after Massey and Frazier come back. Well, Frazier came back. Nick Prado went down. When Massey comes back, probably would have to be Nick Lofton again, assuming he has those options. If not, again, you might be having to look at another DFA candidate for one of the super utility guys. Jackson asks, I don't know if you already recorded the Mailbag Friday yet, but I was curious on your opinion on maybe swapping Salvi and Vinny in the lineup until Massey's back. Feels like Salvi needs that protection in the lineup pretty desperately. He does need that protection, but I don't think Salvi's going to change who he is at the plate, really. I think this is who he is, and whether you hit him 4th or 5th or 3rd, he's going to be swinging a lot of pitches out of the zone. And when he gets hot, that's what we also appreciate from time to time. 643 Orioles ask, what's your least popular Royals opinion? I'll die on the hill. I think MJ Melendez is going to have a strong second half. Sue me. I've stood by it. I'm not leaving it now. I think I'm just going to continue to have that type of optimism with MJ. And lastly, this one also comes from 643 Royals. If the Royals were in a playoff game tomorrow, what would your ideal 5 through 9 in the lineup be, assuming the top 4 stays the same, not including anyone from the outside organization? So 5-hole, I'd want Massey there if we can include Massey. 6-hole, I would want Renfroe there. 7-hole, who would that give me left? 7-hole, I would put MJ there. 8-hole, I'm putting Velasquez or Renfroe or Velasquez will either at 6 or 8, and then 9 would be Kyle Isbell. So there's my 5 through 9. All right, we ran a little bit long, but that'll wrap up another edition of Locked On Royals and another edition of Mailbag Friday. Thank you to all who sent in the questions, and thank you to all who continue to listen every single day. One last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It is a free streaming channel, program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you canvas analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to be off for the weekend, of course, but back on Monday to recap the entire series in LA, how it went, what the Royals look like, and maybe a move or two that could have happened. Who knows? We'll be ready, though, to go on Monday. Until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.